G'day! In today's video I'll be doing a review on the MSI GF65 Thin 10UE. I've owned the laptop for around about a month and I will try and cover most aspects regarding this laptop, and at the end I'll do a bit of a summary overall of what I think of this machine. So let's get into it. So my particular version had the i5-10500H, the RTX 3060 Max-Q, a 512GB SSD, 16GB of RAM, Wi-Fi 6, and also a 15.6-inch IPS level 144Hz panel. The overall appearance of it's pretty subtle, with a brushed metal back, but mostly an all-round plastic feel to it. Looking across the front of the laptop, I found that the slight curved or roundness of the plastic didn't really cause any issues with my wrist, unlike a few other laptops that I have tried. And looking underneath, we can see there's decent ventilation, and there's also two downwards facing speakers which aren't really in an optimal position. Looking at the right hand side, we have the Kensington lock, gigabit Ethernet, two Type-C ports, two USB 3.2s, and a headphone jack. Going around the other side, we have the HDMI port, and we have the power jack there, which typically when the power cable is plugged in, the hot air vent there is typically blowing directly onto it. So a bit of poor design that I'll elaborate on later on. And lastly, just going across the back, there's really not much here apart from two air vents. As you can see, one on the left, one on the right hand side. The keyboard I have been enjoying. I do find that it almost reminds me of a MacBook Air keyboard with the butterfly switches, yet this one has a bit more travel to the keys. I found the key spacing to be pretty good, and I've definitely been happy with the Windows key being placed down the left hand side. Mine being the base model, only lights up in red though. The trackpad on here has been perfectly adequate, with it just being one single piece of plastic, with no individual keys down the bottom. And here's a bit of sample of the keyboard typing itself. The keyboard itself also has 3 different levels of brightness adjustment, so not too many. Also on this, as I mentioned, on this model you can't actually adjust the colors, yet that is something more premium versions of this laptop can do. I found the portability of this machine to be pretty good, being that it weighs around 1.86 kilos, which for a gaming machine is not too bad. Also I found that the IPS level display in here at 144Hz has been very good. Played plenty of CSGO matches on here and I can't really fault the panel itself. Granted, the color accuracy on here is meant to be pretty bad, so it's maybe not too good for creation types, but if you want something to game on, I think this might be a pretty decent panel for you. The webcam is alright. I find it captures a decent amount of detail. The audio could be a little bit better as it sounds a little bit hollow. Also, if you do walk around with the webcam going, do prepare for a fair bit of wobble. And also, if you don't use the webcam at all, you can disable that in the MSI Dragon Center software. The Dragon Center was about the only form of software I found on here, apart from all the stock Windows stuff. From here you can do a little bit of overclocking. Also in here you do have the option to have essentially the best battery life you can possibly extract out of this laptop, which should net you at least 3 hours of battery life. And then there's a couple other little tweaks you can do, like disable the webcam, switch the Windows key, all pretty straightforward. When you're doing it, disable the webcam or have it enabled and it's recording, there is an LED on the keyboard that does light up to show that the webcam is active. I found that the fan noise on here wasn't too bad, especially compared to the Gigabyte G5 I previously reviewed, where the fan noise is usually fairly constant, but it's not really at an annoying level unless you're playing an extremely demanding game. Also on the upgrade path, you have 2 free DIMM slots and 2 NVMe slots that you can use, where on mine I've upgraded it and put in another 1TB NVMe, as you can see just here. The power lead that's included is a 180 watt power cable, produced by a fairly generic brand, as I've also seen this on the Gigabyte G5 laptops. My biggest quarrel is though the barrel connector on the end bends 90 degrees, which then when you actually go to plug it in, is either got your power lead running parallel with your air vent, or if you flip it over the other way, it's going to be blocking your HDMI port. So that is just something to note, a bit of bad design there. But anyway, let's keep going. Now let's discuss gaming performance. So this particular one is running a 40 watt Max-Q 3060, which is a little bit on the lower end of the 3060 scale. But if you're purchasing this machine from something like a 1050 Ti or a 1650, the performance is going to be a fairly large upgrade. As you can see, I'm playing Cyberpunk in the background just there. I'm getting about 60 to 70 FPS, and that's at medium graphics at 1920 by 1080 resolution. So the performance on it is fairly acceptable. Granted, it's not as good as something like the Gigabyte G5, but the other thing that you need to factor in there is in battery life and also thermals and fan noise. So I'm sitting here playing it right now, and it's perfectly good, perfectly acceptable fan noise for this game. Yet if I was playing this on the Gigabyte G5, it produces such a loud noise that it's not very comfortable to use, nor would I want to be in a room with someone playing that. Where I found the GF65 to be reasonably on the quieter side, so a lot more comfortable sound. I'd say there's probably about a 20% drop in performance compared to the Gigabyte G5, but definitely a large or decent step in performance. On the channel I have released other videos regarding game benchmarks for this machine, with most games typically getting over 100 FPS at medium to high graphics at native resolution, so definitely a decent performer with today's modern games. So in summary, the MSI I find is a bit of jack of all trades and master of none. The overall performance is good but not great. The battery life is acceptable but not good. But if you can get it under MSRP by around 20%, I'd say this would potentially be a decent laptop to keep hold of for years to come. If you're wanting a bit more performance and go for a Max P variant of the graphics card, you will definitely be paying for that with your money, the battery life, and the fan noise. So overall, a pretty decent gaming laptop.